What happens when a government cannot control widespread protests for more than 2 months? In some cases, there's a clampdown. In others, there's a concession. In France, there's a national debate. President Macron has launched what he calls the national policy debate. Over the weekend, the French president penned an elaborate letter to begin a 3-month-long consultation process that begins today. For the past 2 months, France has been witnessing violent protests. They're called the Yellow Vest protests. The trigger was Mr. Macron's decision to hike fuel taxes. Now this protest has morphed into a wider agitation against the government. The president has taken steps to pacify these protesters. He raised minimum wages and pensions. He abandoned the fuel tax hike. But the public remains unimpressed. They say the Macron government is arrogant and out of touch with reality.
Pour les calmer, il faudrait déjà que le président de la République soit un petit peu moins arrogant et soit un petit peu plus proche du peuple. Je pense que pour le moment, il est quand même très loin et qu'il a donné beaucoup d'espoir, mais qu'en fait, il ne tient pas du tout ses paroles et qu'il est beaucoup trop loin du peuple.
Tout ce qu'on a pu lui demander jusqu'à présent, il n'écoute pas. Il en a rien à foutre. On sent bien qu'on est juste des pions, que ce qui peut arriver à la France et aux Français, c'est absolument pas dans ses préoccupations. Donc nous on se dit, bah voilà, il veut garder le cap, nous aussi on garde le cap. On est ses employeurs.
The national Yellow Vest debate is underway at a small town in Normandy amidst tight security. Around 700 mayors are taking part in the debate, which will focus on 4 themes: taxes, green energy, institutional reform and citizenship. Many of France's citizens have also sought to restore a wealth tax, which was removed by Mr. Macron's government last year. But the president's letter rules out a discussion on wealth tax. In fact, the government wants the so-called grand débat to help the president regain his popularity. Critics dismiss the debate as a time-buying tactic.
Ça n'a pas une grande utilité parce que de toute façon les gilets jaunes ne vont pas céder et je crois que ça va retarder. Lui, il essaye de gagner du temps, c'est tout.
Ça me paraît bien compliqué, bien mal parti. Mais bon, on va essayer de voir. Apporter des nouvelles idées, c'est fait pour ça, voilà. Mais j'ai l'impression qu'on a un petit peu un gouvernement un petit peu obtus.
He calls it a stubborn government and he may not be off the mark. In his letter, the president says that he will not reverse his economic reform, something that prompted the Yellow Vest protests in the first place. The government is trying to paint this exercise, this debate, as an effort to engage with the people. Finance Minister Bruno Le Maire has urged the citizens to actively participate in this debate.
Nous devons avoir moins d'impôts en France. Nos impôts sont trop lourds. Nos taxes sont trop nombreuses. Et pour avoir moins d'impôts, je ne connais qu'un seul remède: avoir moins de dépenses publiques. Simplement, ce que nous ont dit les Français, c'est qu'il ne fallait pas décider ça dans notre chambre tout seul.
President Macron's core economic ideas will not be tweaked. Reforms will continue as usual. The question then is this: what will this 3-month-long national debate achieve, except to try and polish the president's public image? I'm joined by Elena Casa Montanez, Wion correspondent from Normandy. Elena, how do people see it? Do they see it as a sincere attempt on the part of the government to reach out and to address their concerns?
Well, that's the question. President Macron has said that he is here to listen, not to talk, at this meeting he's holding in the sports hall behind me with, as you were saying, about 600 mayors from across Normandy, many of whom have been holding complaints books in their town halls over recent weeks, where people can come and write down their demands, what they want to see from the government, and then the mayors are now bringing them to the president, which is all part of a debate that's supposed to go on for 2 months, and which Macron said in his letter to the nation on Sunday night will have no taboos. Absolutely everything is up for discussion, he says. The problem, though, is that many of the Yellow Vest protesters are already dismissing the debate from the start. We interviewed some this morning who turned up here to protest, and they said, we think the president has already decided what he wants to see from this national debate. They noted that in his letter to the French, he ruled out U-turning on certain signature policies of his, like a wealth tax that he controversially scrapped last year, which many Yellow Vest protesters would like to see re-established. So they're saying that he's just looking for a rubber stamp in order to go ahead with policies that he would have supported anyway, and that they don't want to participate in this debate because they don't believe they'll really be listened to.
So he wants to talk about green energy. The transition to green fuel is something that sparked the protest in the first place. He doesn't want to mention the wealth tax. He doesn't want to rethink his economic reform. Has an exercise like this been undertaken in France at all? And what is the government's assessment? What is the best case scenario for them? What do they expect to achieve from this?
Well, it's certainly true that Macron in his letter set out this debate around certain key themes, which really are what he wants to talk about. He wants to talk about lowering taxes. He wants to talk about cutting public spending and getting rid of some public service jobs, which isn't something that the Yellow Vests are calling for, but it is something that he talks about in his letter to the French. So he is trying to frame the debate around policies that he wants to pursue anyway. People aren't keen to see that, but it's hard to see really what the Yellow Vests themselves want. That's part of the problem, of course, of this movement, which was spontaneously organised on social media and which doesn't have any key demands. Some of the things that people are writing in those complaints books around town halls have been picked up by Macron in his speech and are likely to be part of the subject of this debate, like, for example, the idea of involving ordinary people more in the democratic process, something that the Yellow Vests have talked about a lot. But their demands remain so vague and so difficult to define that they don't necessarily fit well into the terms of what Macron wants to discuss.
Right, Alina, thanks very much for joining us with that update.